Today we have a very special guest. His name is Bjarnesen. Have I nailed it again?
No. Fuck. No, fuck that. You said
Bjarnesen.
Yeah, got it. It works out to be about 1 in 3 people are either going to be LGBTQ themselves or have a direct family member who is. So about 21 I came out, and 22 I joined the police, and I went back in the closet again because there wasn't a chance in hell I was ever going to be out. There's that fear or that hatred just because of that lack of education.
TradeMutt Radio, coming through on your wireless.
Cans are on.
Earmuffs.
We're red. We are centered. And we're recording. You're away.
How's the volume for you, Benno?
Perfect.
Good?
Might just get that mic a little bit closer to your buddy John Mellencamp there. Yes, absolutely. All right,
fantastic. If you need to manoeuvre at any time, just
feel free to do so.
And the exits are down the hallway and
on either side.
On either side. If you need any extra inflation, blow into this.
Blow into this whistle. All right, Daniel.
Yeah, sorry, that was part of the introduction because we are very stoked to be back in the TradeMutt Radio studio today for another cracker of a podcast. They're always crackers, aren't they?
Well, when we start them off like that.
Today we have a very special guest. His name is Bjarnesen. Have I nailed it again?
No. Fuck. No, fuck that. You said
Bjarnesen.
Yeah, got it.
Bjarnesen, not Bjarnesen. He's like fucking Swedish.
What is the back? Anyway, we'll get into that.
Bjorn is actually my pretend coffee name that I give to the barista when they need a name. Anyway.
Big Tex is funnier.
Ben Bjarnesen, a Queensland police officer for 14 years. General duties, taking care of the Valley. God, the big fella. Founder of LGBTQ Domestic Violence Awareness Foundation. I should have said the LGBTQ Domestic Violence Awareness Foundation. And this guy's had a very short bull riding career.
Really?
Very short bull riding career, which we're going to get straight into. Ben, welcome to the studio. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Sorry. Might have been a drawn-out intro, but we got there in the end.
Mate, you just dribbled it out. It's like, open the faucet, get it out. Anyway.
Short bull riding career. So what's it like riding short bulls?
Should we restart? Jeez, that was so
that was pretty good.
That was dad joking all over the place. So what is this bull? What is this bull yarn?
Well, when I was 17, I thought it'd be cool to go and ride bulls while I was jackarooing, and had 3 rides, fractured my leg on the 3rd one, and then my boss gave me the ultimatum of you can either keep riding bulls or you can have your job, so I kept my job.
Yeah, smart play. Yeah, I never... I remember we rode some bulls when I was working up in the territory just in afternoons out of the D-shoot there in the horse yards. They were good fun, but never got on one at a rodeo. But, yeah, look back, I probably should have.
The only story that Ed's ever told about this kind of stuff was at the first speaking engagement that we ever went to at, Barclay. Tennant Creek, for the beef producers dinner, wasn't it? Barclay.
Oh, what was that? Oh, yeah, it might have been young. No. It was the it might have been beef producers. Anyway,
it was the first event we ever went to talk at. And I was not confident because I'm from Sydney, and so we had this massive crowd of, cowboys and cowgirls.
And I'd been to Tennant Creek before, and I had a story about Tennant Creek. Anyway, I tried to tell a story. Didn't get anything out of him. I was like, fuck.
He fell flat on his ass. And
literally in the story and in real life. But anyway.
No one laughed, and I took the microphone. I just managed to pay out Ed for his shit joke, and that got the crowd laughing.
That got the laugh, so I was like, that'll be my job in this business. But no, Ben, welcome. It's funny, the person who brought your name forward was actually Charlie Fisher, my old ag teacher.
There you go.
Yes. Chucky obviously was he your teacher when you were at Churchy?
Yeah, he taught me ag science at school.
Yeah, me too.
And in charge of army cadets.
Yes, absolutely. So
he was in charge.
Yeah, Charlie Fisher, mate. He goes way back. And he's an old Churchy boy himself. And then, he's been teaching, he was teaching ag for centuries, pretty much. But no, big Charlie Fisher is a champion bloke, a great mate. And yeah, when he sent your details through, I was like, fuck, we've got to talk to this bloke and connect. So it's great to finally get you in for a yarn. I mean, the other interesting part is that we've had a very similar journey through the starts of our lives. We both went to Toowoomba Prep for 2 years, Churchy for 5 years, and then down to Marcus Oldham for a year.
Yep.
Which is, yes, a rare combination for two blokes to have both gone through. You're from Dalbury originally, you were saying?
Yeah, so family's originally from Dalby and Toowoomba sort of area.
Yeah. Cool. And so, we spoke about in your very slow introduction of Dan onboarding into this podcast, that you're the founder of the LGBTQ Domestic Violence Awareness Foundation.
Yep.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Yes, I've said it correctly. So you're an openly gay man.
Yep, certainly am.
And you've had you've got a very interesting story, and one that obviously we're going to go through today. But what I said in the pre-chat before we came on air was that you going through the same start in life that I did, through those different institutions and surrounded by those similar people, I couldn't imagine what it was like for you as a young gay man growing up in those situations. Because me looking back, it was a hard place for most people, let alone someone that was gay and going through that themselves and navigating life early in those situations. So what was it like for you at boarding school growing up?
Look, it was one of those things where sort of had a bit of an inkling that I was gay then, but there was no way in hell that I ever wanted to be out or even mention at 21. So up until I was probably 21, 22, kept dating girls, hoping that sort of side of me would just go away if I put it to the side or ignored it, that I could be straight, and those sort of thoughts about guys or whatever would go away. Obviously, 5 years on or whatever it was, that didn't change no matter how much I tried. But yeah, being in boarding school and also being in the ag industry and that sort of stuff as I was back then, it wasn't a friendly or really a safe place for anyone that's gay.
Because you finished school, you were saying 2001, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so, 20 years ago. We've come a long way.
Makes me feel old.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, cheers, gobbler. We've come a long way in 20 years in this area. But, back then, how hard were you trying to hide that part of you away? How hard were you making sure that fucking no one knew? Was that something that you were actively, very strongly being like, fuck, I'm...
Yeah, totally. It was never mentioned. It was never acted upon. No one was ever going to find out if I had my way. Just that fear of, what would happen if anyone did find out? How would they treat me? Would they still be my friend? Would it disappoint the family? Like, I'd sort of grown up in a very Catholic and ag sort of background family. So there's this sort of expectation that you'll get married, you'll have kids, you'll do this. And so the thought of, having to tell my family that's not going to happen at the time was pretty daunting and terrifying. So it was just one of those things where I thought, no, just pretend it's not a thing, carry on and hope for the best.
And was it something that you were actively sort of trying to play the role as a heterosexual male and that group mentality and the locker room talk of being like, fuck, I'm just going to emulate what everyone else here is doing to make sure there's just absolutely no inkling that people are going to think I'm,
totally.
Not on the same team?
Definitely. Even when I first started in the police, I remember going out with my field training officer and I'd be telling him about the girls that I'd been out with on the weekend and that sort of stuff, just to try and sort of cover for what I'd actually been doing, and going out with gay friends and things like that, because I thought if they knew, they'd treat me differently or they'd give me shit or something like that. So
yeah, you'd be like, yeah, how much do you like chicks? You'd be like, oh, fuck it, mate. Oh, yeah.
That's literally what it was like.
Yeah, mate.
But that must have been fucking
it's
fucking difficult.
Yeah. Exhausting,
right? For you as a person, you must have been confusing yourself, right? Because you're just living a fucking huge lie.
Yeah, I knew what was going on, but at the same time, it wasn't so much confusing. It was just exhausting having to keep up this
facade
and this different.
Do you reckon you
life.
weren't you just never had the opportunity to fully express yourself, just to be your true, authentic self?
No, definitely not.
And I suppose that's the exhausting part, isn't it?
Yeah.
And sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, because especially when you look at schools and that sort of thing, it's so frowned upon, still to this day, unfortunately, at a lot of schools.
Yeah, the biggest fear is that for anyone, the biggest fear is to be ostracised and alone. Yeah. That's the last thing that anyone wants. Everyone just wants to be accepted. Everyone just wants to find their clique, their mates, their group, their community. They want to feel like camaraderie. They just want a sense of normality. I was going to say normalism. That ain't a word.
I love how you stopped and told us that's what you were going to say.
Because I think that shit's funny.
Yeah, it is funny.
But that's what everyone craves. And all anyone wants to be is accepted and to have a support network. And if you break it down to that level, it really doesn't matter what anyone's differences are or what you've got going on, because the problem's never as big as what it is to everyone else as what it is to you.
You build it up inside yourself, yeah.
Yeah,
don't you?
definitely.
What do you call it? It just materializes.
snowballs.
Yeah, but it materializes
perpetuates.
inside of you, and you're just like, this is like so much bigger because those little, like that even the idea around stress that I was talking about the other day. Luke May, there's a podcast actually coming out tonight on our station, is that he has statistics in his book. It says like people that worry about stress, like 84% of the things that people stress about actually never eventuate.
Yeah.
I reckon.
It only was like 3, I think he said 3 or 4% actually statistically do ever eventuate to the how horrific you think it is going to be.
Do you reckon that culture has changed yet in boarding schools and stuff? Do you reckon it's
The gay
still there?
thing?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, I wouldn't know.
Maybe a little bit.
I highly doubt it.
Pack mentality, locker room talk, how blokes act together, mate, it is fucking horrendous.
When I went to my nephew who's 13, I went to his footy game on the weekend, and apparently still there, like the worst insult anyone could have is, you're gay, you're a pansy, or because he'd broken his arm. And, was getting all this grief about, you're gay, you didn't even fall over that hard and that sort of thing. So it is still quite a negative connotation there. But at the same time, there are some schools that are doing a little bit now. Like they can, if they're gay, they can take their male partner to the formal and that sort of thing. But that's still very few schools, whereas at the same time, like Churchy where we went, that's not happening.
Yeah,
So,
they put the bullet in that the year. I think it was 2 years before I graduated. I think it was.
The hard part about that is that they, as you say, they put a bullet in that kind of behaviour because people don't feel like they understand how to manage it. Like people don't think they can manage it correctly, right? Or people think, there's too many problems. What if this happens? What if that happens?
Yeah,
or
but
what's that going to mean for this?
But what could happen?
Well, exactly right. But so this is
going to fucking go on.
This is the point. So, and this is probably part of the problem with that issue and many, many, many other issues. It's like, well, we don't know how to deal with it, so we'll just pretend it's not there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Still now. And
It's like gay marriage. When you look at that, what issues is that going to cause?
I was at the
Zero.
best gay wedding on the weekend. Mate,
Mate,
awesome.
Dan's been raving on about the gay hens party he
Hens
went
party.
to. The double up hens party. Fuck, it sounded like a riot.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But I feel because I've been there. I've been that guy who's used gay as in a negative connotation.
Absolutely. So have I. Yeah. Fuck.
And I wish I knew better at the time. You know what I mean? I wish I knew better because there always has been so distinctly such a negative connotation with being gay. And it's like, that's fucking gay. Or what are you going to, you know what I mean? Even things that like are not even remotely gay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, and that is, I mean, we laugh about it, but it's really not funny because of the amount of trauma and grief that it's brought to so many people.
I know, but I mean,
such a long
but the issue
time.
is that it's a part of it's just such a huge part of our society that it continues to happen. I think it's the self-awareness. It's like what I've been talking about recently in regards to just women. Like I've been talking, like just having honest conversations with like women in my life being like, fuck, I don't fully understand it, but fuck, you've got it tough. Like you've got it so tough. And it's the same.
Women have to deal with a lot.
Oh, and I've just sort of become self-aware of that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing with the LGBTQ community. It's just like, fuck, it must be tough. Like it must just be so hard because there's just so many like ridiculous fucking things that people say in everyday life that's derogatory.
Yeah.
That you don't realize the actual impact that's having.
Yeah, totally. Especially when you look at like, it works out to be about 1 in 3 people are either going to be LGBTQ themselves or have a direct family member who is. So when you look at that, every time someone's saying that, there's someone in that workplace or in that area that's going to have a friend or family member who is LGBTQ themselves. So and that the effect that can have on those people then about the feelings, of negativity towards them or their family.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And I mean, it's just us becoming more self-aware as a society and individuals to make sure that we're fucking stamping this shit out. It's the same thing with the locker room talk that we were talking about, like the fucking bachelor party stuff. It's just sort of like, let's just be better and call shit out.
Well, but the thing, I mean, and I've been a big advocate, as you know, in recent times of calling out behaviours, when the opportunity presents itself. But like, there's one thing that's been happening that I was talking with a couple of girls actually at the wedding on the weekend, is when a conversation comes up about, LGBTQ and anything in that realm, And yeah, it's a comment that really gets me. It's like people try to get in that conversation, but they're dismissive the way they do it. They're like, oh, the LGB, the bloody alphabet people. What are you supposed to call them? You know what I mean? It's like, that's no fucking better. Like, that's no better. You're still like, that like dismissive approach to trying to get in the conversation is just as bad as fucking the rest of it, you know?
Yeah. but let's talk about like, so obviously, you know, you're talking about how much you're holding it back, not letting anyone know, talking to mates at work about women that you'd been seeing on the weekend and stuff like that. Yep. What was the point? What was a turning point for you to say, fuck, I've got to address this and I've got to come out and be true to myself? What was that point?
I just got sick of having to lie all the time and remember what lie I'd told the different people about, you know.
Because when you lie, you got to remember your lie.
Yeah, and that was the worst part.
That's the hardest bit, isn't it?
Yeah, I was with some girls on the weekend and then I'd think that I'd told that to someone else, but I hadn't, and then I'd sort of just got tangled in this sort of web of lies about how straight I was. But it got to a point where I'm like, this is ridiculous. It was killing me, like having to keep those lies up, that fear of what if someone found out and what would they do, how would they treat me, that sort of thing. So it just got to the point where I'm like, enough's enough. I'm just going to have to suck it up and deal with whatever the outcome's going to be. Thankfully for me, it was pretty good. Did lose a few friends. But I'd
just
say
straight up gone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, well,
pretty much
cool.
Gone. Mainly country guys.
Long-term friends?
Oh, at least a few years. Mainly guys, because I lived out in Gundawindi for a fair while as well.
Yeah.
With family out there. Mainly just country guys out there that just couldn't grasp the concept of anyone being gay and thought immediately as soon as someone said they were gay that they were somehow going to be attracted to them.
Yeah, it's like, what are you going to fuck me now? Like,
what's his name? Rob Catter. Rob Catter. Wouldn't he come out like 2 years ago and said there's not a single gay person in his electorate?
Yeah.
And he's got the fucking biggest electorate in the state. And everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's no gay people in my electorate.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's hectic. That's hectic though. Like, I mean, I'm sure we can laugh about it, but it's like, man, you know, that's a shitty thing to think that there's people who will just like cut people off.
Yeah.
But I think they're people that aren't self-aware enough to have that ability to understand and have the compassion and the empathy for someone else and be like, fuck, you know, okay, fuck.
Yeah.
I'm a mate. I want to support you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's not my jam. But fuck, if that's, you know, I'm here for you, you know what I mean?
I think it's one of those things where they sort of, especially growing up in school or country areas and that sort of thing, you're taught so much of how bad it is to be gay or whatever.
Especially in Catholic, like,
literally.
You know, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the Catholic thing? Is it? I'm not pretty
Catholic or Anglican.
Yeah, I mean,
they're pretty much both the same.
Christianity in general,
schools,
right?
yeah.
Christianity in general.
Yeah, but the Christianity side of things, it's sort of like, for fuck what I've understood, it's like,
come on, you went to churchy.
yeah, but it wasn't like fucking anti. It was sort of like, you know what I mean? It sounds like the Catholic thing is a little bit more hardcore.
It's like a Bible thing, right? It's in the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us are reading off the term sheets here and being like, oh, that's where it's written.
But they're all, I mean, they're all just branches of the one original. religion.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that what is that?
Yeah, well, it's actually interesting to see this whole Israel Folau thing coming back up in the media and the Clive Palmer. Did you see the Batuta Advocate?
Nah, I missed
thing
it.
About Clive Palmer is in a big empty swimming pool on his own and he can't get out.
No, but I was having this conversation with my wife. We went out to Jandowie on the weekend, watched my wife's little cousins play footy.
The Jandowie Yowies.
No, what were they? Fucking, I can't remember.
It should be their name.
Yeah, Jandowie Wowies. That's what Dan said on the phone. I was like, yeah, that is funny. I'll bring that forward. No, I was asking Lance, because my wife's a Christian. I said, what do you make of this Israel Folau thing, right? Because pulling everything away, I was like, right, he's entitled to his opinion, by all means, right? I'm like, he's entitled to his opinion. He doesn't need to force it on anyone else, but he can say whatever, you know what I mean? He can say whatever he wants. But what my question was, because when he came out with that Clive Palmer thing the other day, I watched it and I was like, fuck, this is like desperate and fucking shithouse now. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, this is really, really poor. And I asked Lance, I was like, you as a Christian, I was like, are you, like, where are you on this conversation? I was like, are you fucking, like, staunch, like, this is fucking how it is? Like, if it's written down somewhere, is that you and that it? And she was like, no, I'm not like that. There's, like, the Old Testament, right? And then there's, like, the New Testament. And it's sort of the way people read into things but take things so literally, right? Because we're in a progressive society. This happened, like, this was written, you know, supposedly 2,000 fucking years ago, right? So it's like we've come a long way since then. Because, like, even in the Old Testament, it says you can't get tattoos. And, like, Israel Flairs covered in fucking tattoos. You know what I mean? So it's like, mate, what are you fucking talking about?
Interpretation. It's a, like, metaphor and parable and was not
Yeah,
supposed to
but I mean, I'm not trying to go down, like, a religious side of things here.
Yeah,
All I'm trying to say is that fucking, like, there's... The conversation needs to be more open. People can have their views, but they don't need to force it on anyone else.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you're a Christian person, you should be fine and happy to have that view, but then also talk openly with a homosexual person, not have any worries about it. Because who gives a fuck what anyone else is doing? Just be yourself.
That's it.
Am I barking up the wrong tree?
No,
I don't know. I'm just
you're
trying
not. But I tend to think, like, you know, if you're not human enough to understand, you know, humanity and, you know, the different things and effects that, you know, different things you say has on people and has had for a long time. Well, that to me is a bigger issue, you know, and like that's the main thing. Like, we have to grow. Like, surely we're growing. We're seeing so the conversations that I've been having with some of the girls, like from the wedding on the weekend, like, mate, the stuff that they have been through their entire lives, and like not just sexual identity but gender identity, and the impact that has on your, you know, on your frame of mind constantly your entire life.
It must be a heavy thing.
You would not wish it on anyone. You would not wish it on anyone. And if it was your son or your daughter or a family member of yours, there is no way that you would ever want anyone to feel like that. And I think it's getting to that level of understanding where it's like that point, no matter what the differences are, you know what I mean? People don't choose to make themselves a minority.
Yeah, I know. You talk about that a lot. It's a good way of saying it too.
People would not choose willingly to put themselves in a segment of society where they had
ostracized
and looked down upon. Could you imagine what that feels like?
I'll sign up to that.
Yeah.
Where's the onboarding docs?
Yeah, and I think that's for me where the crux of it, where the buck stops. It's like, yeah, if you can kind of understand that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, and like what about, like, you know, with your family? How was that conversation? Like, was it something that was like fucking blew them back, or they're like, mate, we've known for ages, why didn't you just fucking come and tell us? Or because you hear that a fair bit too.
Yeah, none of them knew. I told one sister first, my older sister's first, and she's like, oh really? Yeah, righto. No worries. She's like, let's go into town and we'll go and
let's go to the gay bar. And you're like, fuck
she's going, I don't get fucking hit on there.
There's no gay bars in Gundawindi.
No, definitely not. Not the Royal.
There maybe
the railway.
Yeah. So we went to town and saw my other sister. She's sitting there ironing, and I was shit scared and I didn't want to tell her. So my older sister said, Ben's got something to tell you, but he's too scared to tell you, so I'm going to tell you, but he's gay. And she's like, yeah, righto, whatever. Just kept ironing, so that was a non-issue for my sisters. And so that was a bonus. And then we drove to, Mum was living in Brizzy, so me and my younger sister drove to Brizzy to tell her, and she was fine. Bit sort of startled, but that was mainly because of, I think, her fear of the way she'd seen gay people treated over the years, and she didn't want that to happen to me. So that was what she was mainly upset about. But aside from that, she was fine. So, but I guess I'm one of the lucky ones, though. It's not such a great story for all people. You hear people getting booted out of home or ostracised from their own families or disowned from their families. So unfortunately, that's still pretty common.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was lucky.
And how do we change that?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
One conversation at a time.
Yeah, I know, but how do we, like, I mean, obviously we're progressing a long way in this area, right? As a society, like we've got to say we're moving in the right direction.
I'll tell you how to change it. Go to a gay bar. Go immerse yourself. Go down to the Wickham. Go anywhere. Go and have a beer. Go and
I don't think
have
we been to the Wickham.
I've been to the Wickham 1,000 times.
Yeah, no,
mate,
I don't think I've been.
Get down there, meet people.
We'll go.
Yeah,
it's going to the Wickham.
Yeah, mate. Fuck, it's just like every other bar. You know, there's just a couple more drag queens every now and then. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
A lot of it just comes down to education awareness. Is a huge thing. Like so many other issues, if people just opened their eyes and actually saw what was going on and realised that it's not this
be all and end all.
Yeah, it's just, you know, exactly the same person as you were before. You just happen to like someone else.
The hilarious thing is, like, I look at you know, the gay marriage conversations and all this sort of stuff, and before it happens, everyone, you know, you've got your two camps, whatever they are, like, then after it's done, it's like no one even gives a fuck. You know what I mean?
Literally nothing's
like
changed.
no one No one. And it's, and so that's kind of proof in the pudding right there, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're definitely heading in the right direction. There's no doubt about that.
I highly recommend going to the beat one night and going to the Wickham, go wherever.
Yeah, the beat, I never made it into the beat. I don't know. Oh, well, he never really went out in the valley all that much.
Mate, the beat mega club fucking goes off.
Yeah, it's like fucking 5 levels or something.
Mate, find yourself on the rooftop up there and you'll be having a good time. Yeah. Do you know what I mean, though? Like, yeah, everyone's like, there's these preconceived ideas. And then, like straight guys who are like, oh, fuck, better not drop my keys. What if I get fucked? You know what I mean? It's like, that's not.
Like, I remember when I first started back working years ago, and one of the old guys, he'd probably be like 150 kilos and about 5 foot tall, and he's like, oh, Ben's gay. Haven't you heard Ben's gay? I'll have to keep my eye on him. And
I'm not going to fuck you, mate.
And one of the old women there, she said to him, you got to be kidding yourself. You're 50, you're fat, and you're about 2 foot tall, as if he's going to want to look at you. And I mean, that's the thing is, like, most people that say stupid shit like that are actually like, it's not a thing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So and because you so you went to Marcus, and then you got into the police force.
Yep.
And you've been a couple for 14 years. Is that what? 14 years. 14 years. Fuck, that's a long time. And you've been in the Valley, right?
Yeah, Valley for about 9.
We were just talking off air about how disgusting the Valley is.
Foul area. Why did you choose the Valley as your area to be, or do you not get a choice?
No,
in where
I
you
had
posted?
a choice. So I did Ipswich first, then Tara, which is out between Dalby and Mandara. Then I went out to Roma for 3 years, and I wanted to have a bit of a change. And the biggest change from Roma to the opposite, it's the Valley, and I thought this will be cool.
Yeah, cool.
It's definitely if you like action, you're gonna get action there. Like,
yeah, the Valley. Yeah. Absolutely.
But I was just saying, I was walking through there on Saturday night, and I haven't been to the Valley in ages. Like, it's definitely not the place that I want to be. But yeah, walking through that mall, I saw two fights. Just walking through, like, and they're so drunk they can't even connect their punches or whatever, but they're trying, and everyone's around.
Phones are out. Oh yeah,
hold me back. But yeah, I was watching the cops. Like, moving pretty fast because they've got a few blocks to cover. All on foot, so everyone's moving pretty swiftly when they got to get somewhere. But yeah, you were telling us about the injuries, that you've had a few injuries.
Just a few
injuries recently. A shoulder injury that's put you from wrestling, from a little wrestle.
Fucking get him ground and pound. Fucking Conor McGregor. Get that into your dog.
So you must see a bit.
Yeah, but it's pretty full on. During the week, it's pretty good. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you've got 40,000 people going into a small area, and out of that, you've got sort of 10 to 20 getting arrested. So overall, it's pretty good.
Is that the stats? Is about 10 to 20 a night?
That's a very broad guesstimate, but yeah, it's around about that.
I've been one of those stats, mate.
Have you been arrested in the Valley?
No, when I broke into Suncorp that night.
Oh, well.
Don't even want to know.
No, I got arrested. Don't worry, I've done my time. I did hard time, man.
So how come you decided to join the police force?
Something I was interested in from like school. So I did work experience out at Gundy Police Station when I was 17. But it was one of those things. Mum's like, nah, you're not doing it. She's like, too dangerous. You'll be out of the will. Which she still tells me this day. She's like, that was a joke. I didn't actually mean it. But
you're out of the will. What a fucking weird thing to say. Oh, I'm not giving you any of my money when I'm dead. Fuck you. What's being a copper got to do with that?
Because it was unsafe, so she didn't want me to do it. That was her only. I think that was her only way of trying to stop
her only joker card. Yeah, she played it. That's all I got.
But yeah, it's one of those things. It's something different happening every day. So I studied agribusiness and then went to sort of agribusiness for about 12 months after, and it was just not for me. So I thought, bugger it, I'll give it a shot.
That's good that you can, good that you realised that wasn't for you. You know what I mean? After going and studying at Marcus, which, I mean, I know from your story.
It wasn't for me either.
It costs money. It costs money, but, like, you don't, actually, yeah, with both of you following the same journey, you also got to the same point in that bit too, about finding out that agri wasn't for you. But there's heaps of farmers in rural,
I still
who just do it, and they might hate it, but they feel like they have to do it.
Yeah, we've spoken about that in a podcast before. I think I still like ag, and I still like the rural sector.
He just didn't want to do it.
I'm just like, I'm not fucking going and doing this.
I think that's a massive.
I'm not working in a bank because I remember I was like, at the end of my first year at Marcus, and I was like, well, I got nothing to go home to. I was like, what are my options here? Because I'd been kicked out of college for a term as well. It was a fucking nightmare. Anyway, I got a good grade, and I said to the teacher, I was like, well, what's my plan here? Like, where do I go? Where do I go from here? And they're like, well, you can either come back and do second year agri and then go work in a bank, or do like agri finance or something like that. And I'm like looking at them, I'm like, well, fuck that. I'm like, I'm not certainly not working in a bank, and I'm not getting into finance. I was like, neither of those things fucking are up my alley. So then I was just like, no, I'll just go back into the territory and just see what happens. And then, ended up being here.
But that's massive. I think my point being is that, like, the fact that you can break the mold and go through all that, study, and then get into the industry, and then actually have the courage to be like, actually, I don't want to do this, and make a decision.
But I think that happens not just in that sector. I think that happens fucking through people doing university. And, like, people are like, oh, I've got to go,
degree and
I've got to go do 4 years of fucking this. And you become out and you're events manager, and you're like, fucking, this is shit.
Anyone need any events I can manage?
This is shit. Or people go and do, dietetics, and then they come out and they're like, this is fucking shit. I hate this.
Well, I can't remember what the exact number is, but now people on average change careers in their lifetime so many times.
Yeah, I've changed careers plenty of times. I'm just going to get those beers out of the freezer. Keep talking because they'll freeze otherwise.
We'll just wait here. And explode. Make sure you don't help with any of those boxes out there. But yeah, you really don't see that much, I don't think, anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, so many people get stuck down the track that they're going down.
Yeah, I've always been of the opinion that, you've got to love what you're doing. You're there so much. You've really got to enjoy what you're doing.
So you did always have an inkling to join the police force since you did it in work experience?
Yeah, but I mean, I was keen for it before that, but it was just one of those things where like, oh, no, better not.
Where did you train? Out here at Oxley?
Yep.
Yeah, righto. How was that? So
good.
were you openly gay? No, you weren't openly gay at that time yet,
well,
were you?
Yeah, so I worked so I left school, got into hospitality. I worked at like the Regatta Hotel and a few pubs out in Gundy for a while.
Which pub?
Gundy.
Yeah.
QA and the Royal. No, QA and the Railway.
Yeah, great pubs.
Yeah.
The Railway, always go there for a drink before the races.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
It's good.
Mate, I don't think I'll ever go back to the Gundy races.
Well, you had too good a time. That's why you're like, fuck, I'll just end it on this. This is perfect.
But so I was out when I was in hospitality. So I sort of came out when I was, 18 to my best mates, but that was really about it. My family didn't know. Went to Marcus, was in the closet there, got out of Marcus. So about 21 I came out, and then 22 I joined the police, and I went back in the closet again because there wasn't a chance in hell I was ever going to be out.
You can't, fuck,
in
okay.
The
so you came out to some mates and went back in again, and then fucking came out and then went back in again. So like,
yeah, well, so my mates knew, but then just no one at the academy knew.
As
so,
in, you were going into new environments and you were like, fucking.
So you were basically selective about who you told.
Yeah,
so
totally.
it wasn't a secret anymore. You were just selective about what new people in your life.
Yeah, so when I went to the academy, there was 3 people that knew. So my 3 best mates at the academy knew, and that probably took me 6 months to tell them. Like, I had to suss them out first and work out whether they'd be accepting or not.
Yeah.
Just sort of wait for some cues to see what they were like. And it wasn't until one of my best mates at the time, he was ex-military police, like the toughest bastard you've ever met in your life. And I'm like, oh, not telling him. And anyway, one day I was asking for date ideas. I'm like, oh, I've got to take someone out on a date. And he's like, oh, she might like here. And then he's looked at me, he's like, or is it he might like here? And I'm like, what? I'm like, yeah, it actually is. And like just that sort of bit of a prompt was like, yep, righto, you're cool. I'll tell you. So that was how it came out to him. But really that was it. There was just the 3 of them for the next 18 months were the only 3 people in the police that knew. And, yeah, it wasn't until I went to Tara and was working there. One day the bosses called us in. He's like, so we've got some intelligence from the intelligence section basically saying that there's been some threats made against a gay officer here. That could be you, that could be me. We don't know who it is, but there's apparently threats that this officer's going to get bashed when they're off duty by these local crims. And so he's like, yeah, we don't know who it is. And I'm like, yeah, it's me. So that was how I had to come out in the police.
Okay, yeah, righto. So that must have been a bit awkward, but also...
It's probably empowering being like, yeah, it's fucking me.
Well, yeah.
But it's like, yeah, it's me.
No, it's terrifying. I was in a bloody country town. Like,
Yeah.
population of Tara was like 250 people in the town.
So like when you talk about the local crims, like it just reminds me, like makes me think of like a cartoon where there's just like there's just like narrative where there's just a group of fucking dickhead people and always criminals, and there's like 4 coppers just chase them around town. Like, is it literally just a group of like 10 people in a town where you're the fucking criminals and we're just basically dealing with you pricks day in, day out?
Yeah, look, a lot of the people there was repeat customers, but
It must just be like, it must be sort of half funny when you come out at the end of the day and you're like, yeah, fuck, arrested old mate again. Like he's gone, you know, they're just on this vicious continual cycle and they just don't break the mold, and then their kids come through and they're doing the same thing. Oh, it must be like,
I'm interested to know where the intelligence came from. Like also in Tara, like is there an intelligence like division of the police?
So the intelligence was from Toowoomba, but it was basically a conversation between these two rat bags was overheard, and then that person who's overheard them talking about this plot to bash me off duty has then reported it to intelligence.
Oh, like phone taps?
No, just in a waiting room.
Oh,
so they've just overheard.
It's like, gee whiz, conspiracy. This is great. Let's dig a little deeper.
No, not that exciting.
So what does that do for you? Because like, does that worry you? Like, do you start having to watch over your shoulder when you are off duty? Like, that must be pretty traumatic.
Yeah, well, the thing with a small country town is everyone knows what you drive, when you're working, where you live.
Oh, that's like, yeah.
So, like, it's a bloody small town. There's only a few streets. So that made things quite tough. So I couldn't go to the pub anymore. So it was only 2 weeks between finding out and me transferring. So in that 2 weeks, I went 1 week to Schoolies on the Gold Coast, happened to me around that time. So they said, go there, and that gets you out of town for a week. The other week I packed up. But during that time, I basically was either at work or at home. I wasn't out in the streets. I wouldn't go to the pub and that sort of thing, and just sort of had to look after myself that way.
That's what I mean. Like, can you imagine not being able to go to the pub? Like, that's a fucking...
Yeah, well, that's the only thing to do in Tara.
That's literally the only thing to do. And you literally can't even go to the pub. That's fucked. That's ridiculous. Yeah, righto. Small country towns. It must be hard for police in small country towns in general, let alone a gay police officer. Like,
yeah, well, there's no anonymity at all. Everyone knows all of your business.
And everyone, as you say, everyone knows where you live. Everyone knows what you drive.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we were talking with a mate of ours up in Mooroombah the other day. She was saying, you know, all the cars are numbered, like the work cars. And she's like, I specifically said not to put a fucking number on my car, so like people can't tell that this is like a work car per se, because she's like, if I have to sanction someone or sack someone or whatever like that, they're going to fucking know exactly where I live in town because my car's parked outside. You know what I mean? Yeah. She's like, it's so fucking scary. It's dangerous. Yeah, that they are the downsides of those smaller communities, and especially when there's fucking unrest about fucking something like that. I mean, God, you couldn't imagine how hard it must be for you and so isolating, right?
Yeah, totally. Like, especially like when I went to Roma, obviously everyone knew that I was gay then, because I had to obviously out myself in Tara. So by the time I got to Roma, everyone knew my story and why I was going there and all that sort of stuff. And then, so there was no sort of gay people visible at all really in Roma, sorry.
But how are you feeling through all this? Like, right, it's not you're not feeling shame. You're not feeling shame. Are you just feeling like, what's the feeling?
I don't know. I just remember it was bloody horrible because all of a sudden I had to upend my life after only being in Tara for sort of 6 months and then move to a completely new place, all because of my sexuality.
And do you think do you think people had a preconceived idea of who you were as a person just because of that? They were like, oh, you know what I mean? Like they were judging you as who you were as a person by that.
Well, it's just one of those things without that sort of education. You got these people that are fearful of gay people to the point, or there's that fear or that hatred just because of that lack of education about.
But what is the hatred though? Like, is the hatred being like they've got no fucking idea?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah, that's so weird.
It's one of those things. Like what would make someone hate someone so much because of who they love that it makes them want to act out physical violence?
Yeah, I think it must just be literally just the history. Like, it's just been built into so many kind of cultures or conversations or religions for such a long time. There's always been such a negative connotation towards it that's just become indoctrinated into people's psyches, right? Yeah. And so it's just the process that we're in now is and for the past, Well, for a few decades now, like obviously the gay rights movement has just continued to gain progression,
in the right direction,
in the right direction over time. It's just a fucking slow,
it's a slow burn,
a slow like transition, and like anything, it's a generational switch, and it just takes.
We're
like
still
a decade.
going through it with racism. Fuck me dead, like
but racism, things like climate change or action on the climate.
We're not going into climate change on this podcast, please.
But any of these conversations, anything like it takes, anything where as a society we're trying to be better, like we're trying to be generally morally better.
Where there's a moral change, a progressive change.
It just takes that time. It just takes those decades. Like it just doesn't happen overnight, and you got to wait for the dinosaurs to die off too.
Yeah,
like
the boomers are heading in the right direction. I know. Fucking housing prices, here we come.
Yeah, well, they've got it all wrapped up, don't they?
Negative gearing bastards.
So you went from Roma, so you then spent some time in Roma.
Yeah, so 3 years in Roma.
Did you? We love Roma. Did you? Hopefully you love Roma as well. Hope you had a good experience.
I'll never do it again.
We had some good experiences out in Roma. We had the guys from Roma and Wire and Steel who got us to sign.
That's right. They got us to sign our shirts. Fucking hell, that was funny.
Yeah, funny.
Legends. But
3 years out in Roma.
Yep, 3 years there.
Yep,
it's pretty good.
Accepted.
Wouldn't do it again.
What was the end like? Because obviously when you moved in there was this big thing, right? And then at the end, was it sort of like, I've actually progressed here?
Yeah, no, it was pretty good. Like in the beginning, there was people a bit standoffish, but by the end of it, they're like, you're just like any other bloke who gives a shit.
Oh, fuck, thanks, mate. Yeah. Cheers.
So no, it was good. Like by the end of it, so I started up a LGBTI support group out there with some counsellors from ATODS, the Alcohol, Tobacco and Other Drug Services.
How was that? How was that getting people together in a country town like that?
Was that actually quite good. Like the local newspaper got on board and they were putting us on the front page. And
but was it hard getting people together? Was it hard bringing people together?
No, it's one of those, if you build it, they'll come sort of things, where we sort of started this group and next minute we had all these people accessing these sort of mental health support services.
Oh, that's great.
Things, because previously they'd been too scared to access them.
Yeah.
But once they saw that, we were there and they were inclusive and that there was people that were going to look after them, they actually started coming out of the woodwork. And
because Shana Wan from Sober in the Country on her Australian story.
Shan.
You know Shan? Yeah. So
she's from Gundawindi.
Yeah, so we've been trying to get her in here for ages, but we've just missed each other about 3 or 4 times. But we will get her in. But on her Australian story, it talks about how when she accepted that she was an alcoholic and she wanted to start like an AA type situation in a country town, she went and did it, and then no one's rocking up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she went and did it again, and like no one's rocking up, and she's like, yeah, because people were feeling like they couldn't walk in the country town because they didn't want anyone to know that they were a part of this, So it's awesome to hear that there was pickup for that for you in Roma, a group like that, because like people won't even go and see a psychologist in a fucking country town because they don't want people to know they're going and see. You know what I mean?
No, I mean that stuff's still happening now too. Like I was only out in Roma a few weeks ago, and there was people talking about accessing doctors and mental health services there, and accessing their services based around their sexuality or gender identity, and not wanting to go and talk to them because of that fear that A, they'll be judged by the doctor, or B, the doctor's secretary or the reception people or whoever will tell their family who live next door to them, who know their mum, because everyone just knows everyone out there. It's such a small community. Once there's that fear of once you tell one person, the whole town's going to know. So they just don't access it.
And that is probably why it's so common for marginalised members of society to move out of country towns to large cities and find their clique, because again, back to where we started, everyone wants their community and their camaraderie, right?
But like I was saying to Ben before when you're upstairs, was it in that book I was reading, the Sex and Boys one, they talk about homosexual men in small country towns in America and just how fucked it is for them because, well, there might only be 2 or 3 other gay people in that entire county and they're not attracted to any one of them. So they've got to move away because there's no one for them there. You know what I mean? Like there's no group of. It's like you don't think about that sort of shit.
Yeah, no, you see a lot of people moving away and going to that sort of larger metropolitan areas like Brisbane, Sydney, whatever. Just purely because it's safer for them. Because look what happened to me and Tara. It generally can't. It might not be safe for them to be there, to be out and open, or they can't get access to proper services that will support them and things. So they move to cities where they'll find their community, they'll have the right support, and they feel a bit safer.
I don't think there's any other marginalised segments of society that would have to deal with that, really. I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head apart from people who, you know, are struggling with gender or sexual identity. Like, I don't really think there's...
No, well, I
You know
don't.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not off the top of my head. But what I do want to talk about is the like, you know, what created, also what pushed you to start the domestic, like LGBTQ Domestic Violence Awareness Foundation, and your story in that space and how that came about. Because again, we're talking off air about it, and I mean, it's a very complex story in its own right. And I mean, yeah, love to hear that story and how, you know, how this foundation came to be.
Yeah. So I guess I was in a relationship going back probably 6 years ago now. It was great to start off, and probably only about 3 months later, things started to happen that weren't quite right, but I sort of thought, you know, it's just...
And what are those sorts of things like?
So I guess the first thing that ever happened that I can recall was we went out drinking one night out in the valley, went to McDonald's on the way home, and standard. And there was a guy online that was speaking Danish, and my family's all Danish. So I started having I don't know, about 10 words of Danish. I said my 10 words of Danish to him in line, just saying g'day. Anyway, next minute we left, got the cab home, and as we got home, he just absolutely went off his rocker, and it was all, you know, what were you saying to him? Just getting jealous, basically thinking that I was hitting on this guy. And I'm like, he was straight for starters, and B, he's Danish. So I was just having a chat to him. But that escalated to the point where he's like pushed me over on the floor and that sort of thing. So that was the first sort of time I thought, you know, this isn't quite right. But the next day we woke up, he's like, oh, you know, I was sorry, I was drunk, I was emotional, I was scared of losing you, all this sort of stuff, and making these excuses as to why he did what he did. Anyway, so over the next 2 years, there was all sorts of incidents that went from, you know, emotional abuse, monitoring of text messages, like mapping, that sort of thing, trying to tell me who I could and couldn't be friends with, you know, abuse in front of family, friends, work colleagues.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
fuck.
It was always that sort of stuff in front of friends and family. It was always pretty verbal, or things like we had a work party one day, and he rocked up to that and said, oh, I was just getting pizza next door and thought I'd call in. And I'm like, we're 20 minutes away from home. I don't know why I'd come to the place next door for pizza. But I just accepted that. To this day now, I'm like, I don't know why, but I think I'd been that sort of manipulated that it just seemed normal. I wouldn't want to question it, because if I did question it, it would end up with drama, which I didn't want. So I guess 2 years on, all sorts of horrible shit took place. And I finally got onto this website, and there was this relationship checklist on there, which basically said, you know, if you're experiencing this, this, and this, and this, you're in an abusive relationship, and this is where you can get support. And it wasn't until I ticked all these boxes in this checklist I thought, holy shit, I'm in an abusive relationship. And then once I'd actually realised, I went about getting out of it. But it was one of those things where, being gay, I hadn't recognised it, because when you look at the you know, DV generally, like through the media or support services, it's always a guy perpetrating violence against a woman. So because of that, I didn't recognise it could affect me, for starters, or that I could be a victim of it, or what the sort of behaviours would be. So it wasn't until I actually saw it in front of me on this checklist, I'm like, holy shit, and got out of it. And then for sort of, 12 months after that, I put up with it, where he'd contact me still, and somehow found out where I was living, where I'd moved to, and rocked up there on the doorstep, fell asleep on the front step, and I went out to go to work one morning. He's like asleep there on the doorstep, that sort of thing. Anyway, so then I went and got a DV order, and then thankfully that worked, and never heard from him again. But I guess I've gone on a really big loop as to why the foundation's come about, is really just because so many LGBTQ people were saying, you know, aren't recognising that they can either A, be a victim, or B, be a perpetrator, or for that matter, you know, friends and families aren't recognising that their loved ones can be affected by it as well. So I sort of look back and think, you know, if there's more awareness of the issue, A, would I have recognised it earlier and got out earlier, or B, would my family, friends, or work colleagues have recognised it earlier and said, "Hey, this sort of stuff that he's doing to you is domestic violence, and you need to get some support."
Do you think that you were? You think you sort of half knew, but it was like, I mean, because looking at it, like you're a copper, right? You're the one that's fucking going in and saving people from domestic violence. So were you like, fuck, I can't really, like, I got to work this shit out because, like, I can't be fucking getting on the receiving end of this shit when, like, I'm supposed to be
I'm the police.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be preventing this shit. Like, that would have been hard. Was it for you to go and talk to your colleagues and be like, fuck, I'm actually in a pretty bad spot here?
Well, I didn't talk to them. So, like, I was.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So that's my whole point. So,
like, for starters, there was, like, I guess the shame of being a guy and being affected by it. And I'm like, I don't want to talk to anyone about it because they're going to say, you're weak, man up, suck it up. You're a big guy, you can look after yourself. It's not domestic violence. So it was sort of that fear that if I did actually tell anyone, that they'd ridicule me about it or that sort of thing. So I didn't tell anyone. But there's really came down to just not having a clue that it could affect me. I thought, I'm a cop, I'm a big guy. How can I be a victim because, we're two guys and there's not that sort of...
was this one of your first full on gay relationships or something? Like, was this the longest term relationship? I'm trying to say.
It was the longest.
So maybe you were thinking, fuck, is this sort of half normal? Maybe, I don't know.
Well, that's another thing. Like, you grow up and you don't have any. For my age, thankfully, that's changed for young people now. But when I was growing up, there was no good gay role models.
That's what I mean. So you probably didn't know. You probably thought, oh, this is what it's like.
This is what it's like. Like, when I was growing up, it was the likes of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I mean, they're not the great relationship models.
Great movie though. I haven't seen that.
Are we talking predominantly because the misconception is that domestic violence is physical violence?
Yep.
But obviously, you talk about getting pushed over that time, but you're also talking about controlling behaviours, monitoring your behaviours, rocking up unannounced.
What's that? It's called
control.
What's it called? Coercive control.
There's coercive control. There's like emotional abuse, financial abuse. So there's all of these different ones. But I guess I still remember this to this day. There was one day we were walking home and he'd gone off because where we'd been dropped off in a cab. It was sort of there was two ways home. And I said, oh, no, we'll go this way. It's quicker. He's like, no, this way's quicker. I'm like, right, we'll go this way. And so anyway, me just having a joke and mucking around, started counting steps, being an idiot. And next minute just lost it, turned around, giving me this big shove in the chest and started blowing up. And I still remember that time. I'm just like, I actually just wanted him to punch me in the face so that I had this sort of clear indicator that it was DV. Because prior to that, it was just everything else was sort of... wasn't that clear, and it was always blamed on something else. It was always like, I was drunk, or sorry, it's because I had a tough upbringing and this is what happens, or I've got mental health issues, or I'm stressed because of work, and there was always a reason for his behaviour, and there was these apologies the next day, and they say in domestic violence that there's a cycle of abuse where it's sort of the honeymoon period where things are all fine and dandy and great, and then there's this build up where things aren't great, then there's the blow up, and then after that's the apologies and that sort of thing. Like, and when we'd have these sort of things where it'd blow up, and then the next day it would be, I'm sorry, I love you so much, and I want to marry you, and like we went and got a bloody tattoo of my name on his chest. He bought commitment rings, like all this sort of stuff. And you're like, wow, if he's doing this sort of thing, he must really love me. And he'd go to the effort of, I'm going to see a psychologist, I'm going to do this, I'm going to change, and you'll think, I'll give him one more chance to see how he goes.
To change.
But there's so many one chances that it just keeps going.
That's fucking confusing, eh? That must have been very confusing.
Yeah.
Just trying to wrap your head around.
And
because that's an emotional roller coaster.
Oh, yeah.
And when your heart's in the game as well. Like
how long were you together for?
2 years, or just over 2 years, unfortunately. Should have been about a month.
Yeah, but you don't know that.
You don't know.
And especially at the time, like when I look back at it now, I'm like, what was I thinking? Like literally yesterday, just by chance, I was looking for a USB at home and I dug one out of this bloody...
Isn't that a pain in the ass trying to find them fucking things these days? When you're at school, they're everywhere. Now, they're just nowhere. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
Separate podcasts. We'll do one on USBs.
I dug one out of a drawer and put in the computer, and it's one that I hadn't used in 6 years, it would seem, or 5 years. And on that USB, it was this list of all this horrible shit that he'd been doing, which I'd been storing remotely on a USB, so it wasn't on my computer if we got into it.
Like what you'd been making notes.
Yeah, I'd been sort of saying, like, made a bit of a timeline of what had happened and that sort of thing, just to try and, I don't know, check myself, I guess, to remind myself so that, you know, it didn't get sort of 6 months down the track and I was like, oh, it's all fine and dandy. So it was just a bit of a reminder of what had happened and when, in case it did. So I knew something was going on, but I just didn't know to what extent. But just looking at that, I'm like, why didn't I pick up on that, or why didn't I do it? But I think that manipulated and controlled, that they've just got the upper hand and can just bloody use the puppet strings on you.
Yeah, also it seems to be a common thing that whenever you're in any kind of situation, whether it's domestic violence or otherwise, that when you're in it, you're balls deep in it. You can't your perception's clouded, right? There's emotions at stake. It's not until you actually remove yourself from that situation and look back from the outside looking in that you can really understand where you're at.
Get a perception of what actually was going on.
Yeah.
And that's the difficult thing, hindsight, isn't it? Fucking hindsight.
But I said to Ed, like, because we had a conversation about this on the other night.
Yeah,
he said that
Joe Mason.
Yeah, when you were coming in, he told me a story, and my first sort of reaction was, okay, so like there's heaps of domestic violence, obviously in the media currently. There's some obviously horrible things that we're seeing perpetrators commit. And it's commonly heterosexual relationships and male perpetrators against a female victim. And I think the statistics, don't quote me, but obviously the statistics where women are overrepresented as victims. And, obviously, you never take away from the fact that there's a massive problem with the way that men treat women. But you don't hear much from the side that you're coming from. You just don't hear it. But you're still dealing with male perpetrators, who seem to have a lack of emotional control.
Yeah, but you've also got lesbians in same-sex relationships.
Absolutely.
And then queer, non-binary, that sort of thing. And when you look at the stats that have come out recently, it's actually, strangely, the most recent ones is the Private Lives 3 survey from La Trobe Uni. Gay guys in same-sex relationships have actually got the lowest rate out of the LGBTQI.
Gay guys and insane. Sorry.
So two gay guys have got the lowest rate of DV out of the group of lesbian, gay, bi, trans,
really?
Yeah, righto.
Queer.
That's interesting.
So the highest sort of rate for trans men and women and queer. So they've got quite high rates, and it goes lesbian and gay after that. So it's one of those things. It's just, again, education, that awareness that anyone can perpetrate it, anyone can be a victim of it, and the sooner we can recognise it can affect anyone, the sooner we can work towards ending it all. Because at the moment it's so gendered and funded on gender that it just doesn't work for LGBTQ communities, and that sort of invisibility stops them from getting that support and from identifying it early.
Yeah, I was about to say, it probably creates a divide where it's sort of like, like you were saying, I can't be a victim, can I? Like I'm a bloke in a gay relationship. Like, that's not what domestic violence is.
And a police officer. That's the thing that kicked that would that's one of the kickers.
Absolutely. So these are the conversations that we want to keep having.
So with with the foundation, what I know it's only new. It's only you're only sort of December last year. And obviously, there's a massive need to continue these conversations. And
how hard is it setting up a charity, by the way?
It's hard. We were talking about that off air.
Fucking hell! If anyone out there that wants to start a charity,
but as a
brace yourself.
Is there much talk? Yeah, there. Is there anyone else kind of doing similar things to what you're trying? What you've just got off the ground?
No.
And there's never enough. There can never be enough done in these kinds of spaces. But yeah.
So Victoria's really lucky. They've got a bunch of funding just recently to combat domestic violence in LGBTQ communities. But it's really, there's sort of one organisation driving it in each state. So Victoria's got Rainbow Door down there and another one which I can't think of right now. Sydney's got one, Acon and Say It Out Loud, they run there. Queensland's got but it's just these sort of one organisation each place, and they've really got a few people in each organisation driving it. But when it comes to just raising awareness. It's really on a national level because everything's so state-based. So we're probably the only one that's doing it at a national level. And we're not providing support or anything to people. We're just sort of saying, to people, it can affect you and your relationships. We're saying to friends and families and work colleagues, it can affect your friends and families. This is what you can do to help recognise it, what you can do to respond to it, where you can refer people to. We're talking to workplaces and schools and things saying, these are the sort of things you can do in your businesses or schools or whatever to help support people in your organisation. So it's really just about raising that awareness of what people can do themselves, what they can do in their workplaces. And luckily enough, it's actually started to pick up overseas as well. So now we're seeing just recently in the last few months, we're seeing it get picked up in the likes of Ireland, England, Wales, US, Canada.
Because Ireland has a gay prime minister, right? Is that Ireland? Has a gay prime minister?
Canada.
No,
that's
not
Trudeau.
Canada. It's Ireland.
Yeah, I think it is.
It's Ireland, the openly gay prime minister.
Isn't Trudeau? Is he?
No,
He's gay.
straight.
Is he?
He's an ally.
Is he?
I don't know.
What did he do? I thought he was. He's an ally. Or something. I know he's been. Yeah,
Yeah, but no, it's definitely Ireland, right? Yeah, I'm fucking. That's a fact.
We'll run with that.
Definitely. Yes.
You heard it here first.
Definitely. Because that was the huge thing, because they're like Catholics and Protestants over there. And there's a gay prime minister. It was a massive thing. It's awesome.
I think Wales, I'm pretty sure it's Wales, has recently got the first queer mayor in history to be elected in Wales.
Yeah,
But
right.
that's internationally, so first queer person in the world to be elected as mayor.
You must know better than anyone as a police officer that you have no idea what goes on behind closed doors.
Yep.
When you take someone on face value, that you meet them in the street or workplace or mates or whatever.
Yeah, us right now.
That's us right now. This is one side. And then you have no idea how that person behaves as soon as they lock their door at night.
Yep.
And the shit that happens is fucking worrying, very scary. And you must see it firsthand, not just the domestic violence side of things.
And how do you deal with all of that? Like, how do you deal with it? I had to say, fuck. We got one of the psychs come down to have a chat here.
Don't know. There's some good support services and stuff in place at work, but I don't know. You get unfortunately you get used to it. It happens that much.
Do you see?
It's very you don't look into it personally. It's very much this is
A job.
I'm here to do a
Work.
job, and this is what I'm doing.
You've got to really dehumanise it, don't you?
Yeah.
Have
Totally.
you encountered? I bet you never thought from where you were
Here
at.
we go.
From where you were at, going through school, hiding. I suppose hiding away, staying in the closet.
Yep.
I bet you could never have imagined being at that point to heading up an LGBTQ domestic violence awareness foundation. Like,
Oh,
that's
God,
pretty
no.
cool.
Even like 6 years ago, I would have said that was a ridiculous idea. Probably even 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
But
mate, it's a credit to you.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's-
fuck. You've come a long way in regards to when you were a 17-year-old kid at boarding school to what you're doing now. It's incredible, and the journey you've been on to be putting yourself out there and helping make a change in this area. Because, like you said, there's these minorities. We're not talking about that. Not just the struggles it is for you people to get fucking open and out in the community and be a part and accepted, but also the shit that goes on with like domestic violence and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, fuck. It's hard to imagine that we're not more, what's the word, supportive or open and understanding
Progressive.
about progressive.
I mean,
but
that's one of the things with the awareness. We're hoping that once people do realise it can affect anyone and what they can do, that hopefully that might change things a bit.
well, I mean, yeah, hopefully this podcast changes a little bit too.
What are there many? Do you work with many other openly gay police officers?
Yeah, Valley seems to attract a few of us. So there's probably 10 all up, all gay and lesbians in Valley. That's a very rough guesstimate, but somewhere thereabouts.
Yep.
And obviously, obviously the police force is probably a bit of an institution that hasn't, necessarily. Oh, I mean, I wouldn't have a clue, but I would imagine
I
hasn't always.
think they are pretty progressive, aren't they? The cops.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I mean, we say generally that the police force is pretty representative of the community at large. So they say 11% of the community is LGBTIQ. So
Fuck, 11%.
yeah.
Yeah, well, you did say 1 in 3 before. But yeah, 11%.
Oh, so one
in three
is
that
with
know of.
family
Yeah.
members,
But I mean, 11%. Fuck, you wouldn't think that was the statistic.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at some other stats that have come out recently, I think it was Diversity Council of Australia. There's only 43. I'm very roughly going off the top of my head there. Percent of people are actually out at work. So you've got a huge amount of people that aren't out at work at all.
Yep. And how many people do you reckon are still locking it away?
Lots.
Percentage-wise?
At least half.
At least
Well,
half.
that's pretty much what the stats are saying in the workplace. Probably around about half aren't out to everyone in the workplace. They might be out to one or two, but generally they keep it hidden just because that fear of how they'll be treated, whether it will affect their ability to get promoted.
It must be it must be such a hard life doing that, bottling that up.
Well, it
pretending.
definitely has been for a long time. Like with
but that's what I mean. Like for people to think that to wear that, like to wear it for so long and just be like, fuck, that must be so hard and so drawing on you mentally as a person to fucking hold on to that.
Yeah, there's some that's out of that study that they did through Diversity Council. It's quite interesting where it says, this percentage of people isn't out, and the ones that aren't out are something like 40% less productive at work. So it's in businesses' best interest to have their staff bringing their whole selves to work, so to speak, and not try and hide anything because they're so much more productive if they actually are feeling safe and accepted there.
Absolutely.
I was talking. I can't remember who I was talking to recently. We were talking about, for example, the AFL. Like, there's not one openly gay AFL player.
But they've got the Pride round. I was only going to say that before. So AFL's got the Pride round, but I was thinking about because I'm a massive NRL supporter, and there's Ian Roberts is the only guy that's ever come out gay as a rugby league player,
and
fucking
seen what he went through as well in his time playing. He got absolutely fucking bashed up for it during his time playing.
Yeah, but I mean, but there's just been one.
Yeah, I know. It's like it's crazy.
And it's hard to fathom that that's not accepted either. And I'm sure there's blokes going to be playing NRL this weekend that are gay or in the LGBTQ community and aren't talking about it. Like you were saying before, the amount of heterosexual tradespeople that are in these hooking up with these gay areas in Brisbane.
Yeah,
right. Well, what did you call it? You said
beats. They called
Point being, there's definitely a lot of what do you call them, closeted or heterosexual people who are going and engaging, getting their fix,
And it was and the FIFO community too. There's a lot of married men in the FIFO community doing it as well, apparently.
So when you're asking like what needs to happen or like what needs to change, like still like socially, like I think it's socially. I always talk about this every time we go talking somewhere now. It's the social shift, right, that needs to happen. Same with the mental health space. Same with LGBTQ.
Yeah, but they're all so connected.
Oh, they're all connected, but it's like
a big web. It's like you get this bit going, and then that's going to tick that box, and it's going to tick that box.
The only thing that can change, like socially, and this is why I said when you're like, well, what can you do? I'm like, go to a gay bar. You know what I mean? Go and have a couple beers at a gay bar. Like, go and talk to people. Make your own stories that you can then pass off to your own, communities, your own networks, and be like, fuck, you know what I mean? Because that's how you just start to normalise all of it. Immerse yourself in it,
Absolutely.
Go down to Mardi Gras. Fuck, I've had some good times at Mardi Gras. I remember my
fun.
Yeah, fuck, my mate Al Watkins got smoked in the face with a stiletto in grade 10.
What, smacked over the head with it?
Smacked over the head with a stiletto.
Fuck, that would have hurt.
By a drag queen.
What did he say something?
Someone said something, and I don't even think it was our group, but he copped the heel for it. And he went to school the next week.
In the fucking eye. He'd be blind.
He had a black eye. And everyone at school, all the teachers, all that, like I went all boys school, 1,400 students, I think it was, all the staff, everyone. It just went through every single person in the school within like a couple of hours.
A microsecond.
The big Al Watkins with the black eye got smacked in the face with a stiletto at Mardi Gras. So anyway.
Hope he's recovered well from that incident.
Good story to tell.
Benno, mate, thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. I mean, yeah, it's an intriguing story. It's a great one. I'm so glad you're able to come on and share it with us today. And good luck on Friday because it's your big day.
It is, yeah. So LGBTQ Domestic Violence Awareness Day is on Friday. So we're seeing bridges and buildings getting lit up all around the world, around Australia and across the world. So we've got
And this is all you're doing?
Yep.
Fuck, mate. Well done.
Wait.
Kept me busy.
Hang on. Well, I don't know about this. We haven't covered this on the podcast.
We just talked about his foundation. There's big days on Friday.
No, yeah. But what? So tell us, how have you organised this?
A lot of work.
So you got
lots of emails, lots of calling in.
So
hey mate, do you run the lights at the Story Bridge?
Literally.
So what's actually happening?
So Brizzy here, we've got the Story Bridge, Parliament House, City Hall, all being lit up rainbow colours to just sort of shine that light on the issue and say, this is why we're lighting up. We're here to support LGBTQ victims and survivors and remember those that have actually lost their lives. I mean, I look at where I work in the Valley, the last 2 homicides in our division have both been domestic violence, same-sex domestic violence or LGBTQ domestic violence incidents. There was only one just last week or 2 weeks ago in Sydney. So it's happening, but it's just not being recognised or spoken about. Yeah. So
wow.
The bridges and buildings being lit up all across the world, which is really good. And then we're just getting organisations and individuals on board sort of making a pledge to be part of that change in the conversation and to make sure that they include LGBTQ people when they're talking about domestic violence and making sure that there's sort of the appropriate support available for them.
So, and just so that I'm clear, you have orchestrated this thing that's happening around the world. You've done it.
Yep. With the assistance of a lovely little board. There's 6 of us on a volunteer board.
And so what other places around the world? Like, tell me what other things are getting lit up. I think this is fucking awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's fucking, I know. That's why I mentioned it at the end of the podcast.
I can't believe it only come up at the end, though.
So we've got one of the national monuments getting lit up in Canberra. One of the bridges, I can't remember the name of it, in Perth. Another one in Victoria. Overseas, we've got a building in Florida. We've got the the Irish Garda Police, so the Irish Police headquarters is being lit up. The Dublin Mayor's lighting one of their buildings up. And there's a couple of others, but I can't remember them right now. But there's events being held sort of in London, Wales, like the Wales government's getting behind it. Same with a couple of departments from the English government. So there's sort of, it's being picked up in little places. Amsterdam, they had their little pins on at the Eurovision contest the other day. That was pretty cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they had these little Awareness Day pins and they were wearing them there.
Mate, fuck, that's huge.
It's getting picked up in little places, so hopefully it's just going to keep
Well, that'll be a full-time gig before you know it.
It's May, and you established this foundation in December last year.
Yep. Yeah, so last year we had the Awareness Day last year, so last year it was just basically...
Is that when you're on the project?
I can't remember when I was on the project. No, that was beginning this year.
Right.
I think.
Because that's what Charlie Fisher sent me. He's like, you got to get this guy on your podcast. Okay.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And just starting, is this the first time this has happened? Or is this
second? So last year we had a small grant from Queensland Government, so it was really Queensland focused last year. But since it's something that people haven't been talking about, it was getting picked up in a lot of the other areas around Australia. But this year we've had some national funding, so that's still not a huge amount, but it's been able to expand sort of outside of Queensland, and then just organically it's been picked up overseas, and then I've used every other favour and contact that I've got overseas from my travels to try and get it
to hustle it through
as well. Yeah.
That's so cool. And are these pins from your foundation?
They are. I've got a couple for you.
Oh, yes.
Fucking legend. We'll have to get a photo that we'll post on Friday as well.
Absolutely.
On
Mate, that's so
100%.
cool. So impressive. You'll have to get, we'll have to hook you up with Shrinner. Get you in front of bloody...
Yeah, you've been in front of the big Shrin Dog billionaire. He's got a TradeMutt shirt. He fucking loves it.
He'd want to be wearing it.
He'd be wearing it right now, having a couple of
putting up some
axles.
retaining walls.
Doing some core filling.
Now, Ben, if anyone wants to find out a bit more about what you guys are doing, where can they head to?
So they can go to dvafoundation.org is where it's all happening. So there's information on there if people want support, if they want to know how to support their friends or family, if they want to know, what their organisation can do. All that info's there. There's also info about what they can do to get involved on Friday for the Awareness Day. There's a campaign toolkit as well as social media posts and lots of stuff that they can get in on.
Mate, and incredible. And for anyone listening who wants to reach out for any kind of professional support, be it for domestic violence, LGBTIQ or otherwise, TAX TradeMutt.org is there for you. And, of course, text or call 0488 469 88 because we've got some kick-ass psychologists upstairs that are great for a yarn.
Yeah, so, Ben, thank you so much for coming.
Really appreciate it, mate.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hope you enjoyed it.
That was good.
Yeah, it was very relaxing. It was a good, chat.
I've been able to have beer, so that's a bonus.
Mate, anytime. But we'll go down to the Wickham for a couple. Do they do hot buffalo wings at the Wickham? Fuck it.
Probably.
They need buffalo wings.
I've never had buffalo wings. I don't think I've ever eaten at the Wickham.
Well, we've got to go.
Yeah, bloody oath.
Thanks, mate. Really appreciate your time and good luck Friday.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, mate.
Oh, that was good.
If I stop, I'll die.